Oh, so welcome, lads, to another show where we have irrefutable, undisputable proof of systemic racism. I didn't even have to look for this one. This was in my, when you open a new tab in Bing, they have like the 12, 15 or so top articles that are, I guess, probably promoted through, corporate ads or whatnot, however they do it. I'm certainly not an expert at anything like that. Um, they have a bunch of "It's time to remake America now," what the 1921 massacre in Tulsa can teach us about today, etc., etc. It keeps going on. Old dirty bastard in the chat. He feels so guilty. I can't help but feel guilty too, man. I mean, I'm sorry that I'm a white person and that I'm contributing unconsciously to these systems of oppression that no one can name, to which no one can point. They say, let's dismantle these systems of oppression. And we line up and say, if somebody's oppressing someone, okay, we're with you. Let's dismantle this system of oppression. Show me where this system of oppression is at, and we will dismantle it. We will rage against this machine without Zach De La Roca, because Rage was much better once they got Chris Cornell and formed Audio Slave, but that's another story. Let's rage against it. No, we want to dismantle it. Now, let's go. Okay, where are we going? All right, and are we there yet? And they can't find it. They literally say, well, there's no one institution to which we can point. It's crazy. Bobby Quayle must be the whitest of the bird species. Take that up with Mal. She's an expert on bird law. If you don't believe systemic racism is real, explain these statistics. So I haven't read this yet. I just saved it to my favorites and I said, okay, I can't wait. I love statistics because most of the people who have told me in my life or that I've read or heard in my life say, you can't explain this. Yes, I can explain this. It's like Bill O'Reilly, tide goes in, tide goes out. There's a perfectly good explanation about why the tide goes in and the tide goes out. I'm sure these statistics are going to stump me though because I is not too smarts. You can tell from my accent I'm a toothless Cletus. I got 2 teeth left and I take them out before I eat ice cream. You can tell I'm just a dumb white trash. So let's see what's going on here. Woman, white woman. Marcus might be her married name. We got to check for the Bergestein maiden name. Woman. Ruth Marcus. June. So it was today. So we're right on top of this one. Look, welcome everybody to the chat. I'm glad to have a couple people in here chatting. That's good. I wonder if Jared Taylor will ever come on my show. I streamed with Jared Taylor the other night. He's a very articulate, intelligent man. I know a lot of people think bad things of him because he tells the truth about observable situations. But off camera, he is a shitlord. I'm not going to dox him, what we talked about. But off camera, when he feels safe and like you're not trying to get him in a gotcha, he is a dude that you would be in a Twitter DM group with or a Discord with. He is like that. I'm telling you, he's a good dude. Old Dirty Bastard in the chat says, behind the 8 ball has a negative connotation, plus the obvious symbolism of a white ball used to smash a black ball is wrong. They probably, the systems of oppression in white people and their race realism push for eugenics and to objectively miscategorize people as separate races of human beings when we're all one race, the human race, except white people, the inferior people, but somehow race doesn't exist until it does. They probably created pool with that in mind. Here are all the balls of color, the box, the BOCs. And here's the master ball, the cue ball, which is about, I think, a few millimeters wider in diameter, too. So it's superior in every way. And if somebody messes up, you get to take the white ball and place it where you want. So that's a whole nother big discussion. But let me dive into this so I'm not on here all night. Again with the apples, says Ruth Marcus. Now comes President Trump not only blaming bad apples for police brutality, but asserting that there are not too many of them. If you're going to assert that it's not bad apples, that it's the whole system, I hope you got some good stuff, because to suggest that it's the entire system would suggest that with all of the black people that y'all cry that are incarcerated and stopped by police, how do 99.999% of them make it out alive? You know, double the amount of white people are killed than black people. Any one is too much unless it's absolutely necessary. This knee in the neck stuff, I don't agree with that. I don't think, I'm not wringing my hands and George Floyd had it coming. Nah, I don't. Just like I don't think they should have did Joseph Sheldon Hutcherson that way. In Texas, when he ran into the police office, the lobby, saying that his wife was trying to kill him. Maybe he was flipped out on drugs. But you're a police officer. Don't you have to take that seriously? This man is coming in and saying, is that toxic masculinity that the feminists didn't stand up for him? Black Lives Matter didn't stand up for him. Nobody stood up for him. And there were like a dozen ways that people could have stood up for him and called attention to a system of abuses. But because he was white, he was a disposable male. Whites are disposable in our society. And the reason why is that everybody can look at every white country that exists and see how they're doing compared to every POC country. And white people are disposable, whereas the people of color in the West, they're held up to a higher standard because the basic underlying postulate there is that, but if we just give them better schooling and better this and better that, they can change the world. Astronauts, presidents. Always Trayvon Martin was on his way to astronaut training camp. Mike Brown was on his way to his quantum physics course. But anyway, she goes on here to say the problem in his view is just a few bad cops. Look, I'm not reading a hit piece on Trump. This was supposed to be, get off my screen like this. What are you doing, man? I'm not signing up and paying all money, Washington Post. If you don't believe systemic racism is real, explain these statistics. I want the statistics. I'm sorry, I'm not reading an article lambasting Trump. Who cares? Okay, here we go. So let me read leading into it. Ban pool. Bobby Quayle's don't smash the balls. Don't do it. Don't smash them. For those who reflexively bristle at the term, Balco makes an important point. To declare the system racist is not to brand those who participate in it as intentionally repugnantly guilty of prejudice. Yes, but it is thus branding them as racist. It's branding them as unintentional racist, which is pretty much just as bad. Some people may argue worse, that you're branding them as a dullard, a moron who's also racist. You know, a real racist, you think, has intentionality, who wants to intentionally discriminate. These things are oblivious and empirical and objectively obvious to outside observation. That someone with the intentionality to be racist is racist. Someone who's just so stupid that they're unintentionally racist, you're depersoning them. You're othering them. You're taking away everything from them. And for nothing but literally being a white person. You tell me who's oppressed. The people of color who have the freedom to stand up in America, supposedly white supremacists and racists, and profit off of calling us all bad people, either repugnantly racist or moronically oblivious to our racism. Either way, they posit us as an inferior group of people who are inherently evil. Yet we are so evil that we not only allow them to do that, we reward them monetarily for doing so. The writer of the 1619 Project literally sat at a desk and made up history. Just made it up and won a Pulitzer Prize. That's how racist America is. That the top athletes in the nation are all black. The top musicians are all black. The top actors, that's more mixed, but a lot of them black. A president was black. We have a congressional black caucus. Nobody's run them out of town on a rail. I don't see any crosses burning in front of the Lincoln Memorial. Where are these racists? Where are they? Where are they? You say that if the systems are racist, someone has to run the systems. They don't run off God diesel. Some people have to manually operate these systems. Therefore, if the systems are racist, the people who operate them are intentionally racist to make them racist. So where are these racists? With the two dudes in Georgia who attempted a citizen's arrest at Ahmaud Arbery, tried to grab his gun. Now, I'm not saying right or wrong on that. I'm just saying, is that their evidence of where the racists are at? Two hicks down in Georgia, one a retired police officer who got a text asking him to intervene with someone who had been trespassing. That's what a lynching is these days. That's how far we've fallen on these standards. They can't find racism, so they push it to this nebulous corner that even when you check, you can't find nothing. I call it God of the gaps for a political context. Because if you're an atheist or agnostic and you wish to participate in a debate with someone who is devoutly religious and you are being intellectually honest with one another, someone like myself might say, well, we can view cosmic background radiation and trace that back per the assumption that the speed of light is a constant, and we can trace that back, X billion years. I think it's something like 13 billion years. And the cosmic radiation backs that up, that we had an expansion from a singularity that created the matter that we have in the universe today, and everything thus had evolved. And if they said, well, then okay, I contend that's true, but it's my God that sparked that. It's my God that came before that. Because that's a gap in what we know and what we don't know. There's a gap. So this is a gap in what we know and what kind of not even as clever as religious people when you think about it. Because we do know that systems need people to operate the systems, or else they don't function as mechanisms whereby you could call them systems. They have to have necessarily people operating them. And those people operating them would necessarily have to be racist. Yet they continually say that they can't find these people, and they just allude loosely to this nebulous idea about the systems. I apologize, let me get into it here. If you question the accuracy of that statement, please explain why study after study shows that police disproportionately stop African American drivers and disproportionately search African American drivers after stopping them, even though they tend to find less contraband. I don't even see one study linked here, much less study after study. It's hard for me to take on good faith that someone's starting out an article that expressly advertised itself as questions about systemic racism, and they literally just went 500 words in on calling Trump a bad Nazi Hitler racist. It's hard for me to take them on good faith. But I would say African Americans commit a disproportionate amount of traffic offenses. Because she's not saying more, because it isn't more. More white people are still pulled over. White people are so privileged, and white people are supposed to treat other white people good and black people bad, is what they say out of one side of their mouths. But then they have to explain away why double the amount of white people are killed or double the amount of white people are pulled over for traffic violations. And they just explain that way, well, it's more and it's random. But it's not random when it comes to black people, right? It's targeted against them. Could it be maybe they commit a disproportionate... Look, Asians, we all know, statistics bear it out, are the worst drivers. I don't know, maybe because they can't see the road. They don't have the same range of vision that everyone else has. I don't know if that's why. I've never looked into it. I just know I've seen the stats many a time that Asians are the worst drivers, getting the most accidents per capita. Could it be maybe that people that evolved different cranial sizes and brain mass and we have different ocular functionality. We see different levels of light different, and our eyes go bad at different rates. It's true. These are morphological and phenotypical and physiological differences that we have as geographical subspecies of Homo sapiens. A different physiology with different hormonal levels. Could it be maybe that black people who never envisioned a wheel and never created automobiles have a little more trouble in the aggregate handling them than do the people whose genetics created the concept. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying that's it, but they don't ever question it. They see a result. This is the result. Black people disproportionately, boom, therefore racism. That's not scientific. You can't call this a study and say study after study when it's not a study. It's a support of a presupposition. A support of a presupposition is not a study. A study would be to include variables. Let's see, do black people disproportionately break the law? Or are they pulling them over because they're black? Or are they pulling them over because they're speeding? Why is it bad to say, look, listen, why is it bad to say only white people can be racist and all white people are racist, even if unintentionally, yet it's not okay to say maybe black people break the law more? All white people can be racist, even moronically and unintentionally, yet black people are held up to this. They're perfect. They didn't do nothing, is what we're told. They don't even consider the possibility even slightly. They could include that as a variable and then argue it away as, well, black people, because of 400 years of slavery and oppression, have more fear of being pulled over by police, so they tend to drive faster in case they need to make a quick getaway. That would still be a nonsensical argument, but they are too scared to include in here that black people might commit crime. Which, it's a petty crime, a traffic offense, unless it's like drunk driving or something. Then you're talking about something that's a serious felony. But something like a couple miles over the speed limit, leaving a stop sign too soon, which they'll still call running it, switching lanes without your signal, things that can be dangerous but aren't necessarily like stabbing someone in the chest. Let me get to chat here before I continue on. You drive crazy in Asia to get respect. It says calm out. It's probably true. I mean, not everybody can be Bruce Lee, but drivers even vary from city to city in the U.S. Well, that's another thing, too. That's another thing on which we have to focus when we're talking about... See, because they're talking about aggregate statistics. The same way they create the false idea of the wage gap. They don't take into account any of the variables which actually show that younger women, especially right out of college, make a lot more than men. It's that when men get in the workforce and women have children and get out of the workforce, that men are working 60, 70 hours a week trying to climb up the ladder. Yeah, it's the same thing here. Bobby Quill makes a great point. You have to consider in the cities where there's already a lot of high crime and there's already a lot more police, and where most black people live, 42% of black people have Section 8 housing in inner cities. It's just a fact. Well, I don't know if they're all in inner cities, so don't hold me to that, but it's at least 35-40% of them are actually in inner cities. Where it's already a lot of police and a lot of crime, there are probably more people pulled over in general, and there's majority black people there who are there to get pulled over. They don't take any of these variables into consideration, yet still call it a study. A study published last month of nearly 100 million traffic stops by police departments nationwide found that black drivers were far more likely to be pulled over than white drivers. But interestingly, the differences become smaller at night when it's harder for police see the race of the driver. Coincidence? I think not. No, what I think is that when you project that other people are so stupid that they're racist, you're so stupid you can't think. Why are there fewer people pulled over at night? People are driving better at night because it's harder to see what you're doing. Black people, because of their eyesight, like I mentioned earlier, the ocular differences, they evolved in a very sunny climate. Black people see better in the day and worse at night. White people see worse in the day, better at night. It's why far and away more white people have glasses, but our night vision is better. Black people, when they're driving at night, are having a little bit more difficulty knowing what's going on, so they're not driving as fast. They're using their turn signals. They're actually paying more attention. Is that right, what I'm saying? Hey, For all I know, it could be the racist cops, right? The point I'm making is that they didn't include any of these variables in their study. All they did was look at the disparate impact of the result and then said flatly, it's racism. They included no other variables, no other criteria, not even a criterion, not one other, no control, no, and there's no reproducibility in these sorts of studies. And we know that there's no reproducibility in these studies because they try to do the same study again and don't get the same results, so they scrap it and move on to a new study. Therefore, the study done in 2009 is going to stand in perpetuity as the definitive study, not because it is a definitive study, but because they can't achieve reproducible results. It's not testable. Well, it's testable, but it's not repeatable, and it's entirely falsifiable because it is falsified with the next study they do. But they scrap those studies and don't publish them, and I know this for a fact because I've seen sociologists work. If they don't get the results they want, they scrap the study, they change the parameters, and they do a new study. That's why the humanities aren't sciences. If you do that in biology, you don't scrap your postulate, you don't scrap your hypothesis, you tweak things, you find different parameters for testing, different variables to control. Because you're not trying to get the results you want. You're getting the results you get and then concluding something about the world, what is more or less likely. Sociologists don't work like this. They only do studies to support their presuppositions they have about the world. City culture, says Calmal. Old Dirty Bastard says, to the religion of wokeness, being white is the original sin and always will be. Bobby Quayle says, you can turn that study around and say black drivers are more likely to be let off. Well, probably that too. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different things that you can do with it. When they are, I won't say too necessarily stupid or moronic, they are too short-sighted to understand that not everyone else is that. They have this presupposition in mind, and the first result they get that supports it, they print that crap and they peer review it around a circle jerk of people who agree with them anyways, regardless of what they say, and then they publish it as a study, quote unquote. And there are infinite ways one could interpret the data because they haven't interpreted the data whatever. All they have done is say that because it happens more to black people per capita, therefore it is racism. And they do this with everything. They do this with heart disease and diabetes. It happens more to black people, therefore racism. Oh, it has nothing to do with the fact that 87% of black people in the United States of America, an environment in which they did not evolve, have vitamin D deficiencies. Vitamin D deficiencies influence inflammation in the body. Inflammation in the body promotes the resistance of insulin from the pancreas, and it promotes the buildup of LDL cholesterol in the arteries, which brings on cardiovascular disease, and it promotes different kinds of cancers like prostate cancers, etc. It promotes stress in as much as you want to say stress is a measurable, thing that you can quantify. It has been rumored to do that. I don't know if you could actually prove, quote unquote, show that, I should say, in a study. So it has nothing to do with the fact that they don't have sufficient levels of vitamin D, because this is not where they evolved and they need to be in the sun more. No, it's all just racism. The emotional stress of racism. The genetic memory of racism. So here's another one. Why a study of police shooting databases published by the National Academy of Sciences found that African American men were about 2.5 times more likely than white men to be killed by police. Well, I can stop it right there. Because they have 7 times more interactions with police. Say that me and Carmel and Bobby Quayle, me and the Burb gang, we went out to eat at Applebee's. There's 3 of us. There's 3 of us in our party. And we go eat at Applebee's. And we eat there, I don't know. We eat there a couple times. We eat there twice. Well, no, say there's more in our party. I'm doing the math backwards. Excuse me, I'm doing the math backwards. Say, bring Old Dirty Bastard with us too. And say there's 10 people in our party. And we go and eat at Applebee's. I apologize. I got synesthesia, so it's hard for me to do math. I can do it. It just takes me the long way around. We got 10 people in our party. And we go to Applebee's. And we eat at Applebee's 20 different times. And then a group that only has 2 people in it, they go and they eat at Applebee's only a few times. Yet we get the same rates of food poisoning. You know, this is how you can extrapolate this to police shootings. You have to be, if you wanted to study who are the people most likely to wreck an automobile, well, you're not going to study every single human that exists or every single American citizen that exists, because not every American drives an automobile. About 20% of them are too young or too old. Some of them don't have a license, choose not to drive, live in the city. So you're only studying the drivers. So if you want to study who's more likely to get shot by the police, one of the variables you have to include, the National Academy of Sciences, is literally that you have to take into account the likelihood people have of interacting with police and being in that situation where they can get shot. Because police, very, very rarely, if ever, are running up on random people just shooting them for no reason. You have to interact with the police, is what has to happen. The National Academy of Sciences. Literally social sciences. Are they social sciences? God, they're so woke. If they're real natural sciences, they're so woke. Why would, honest question, why would the National Academy of Sciences release a study that took 0 variables into account? It's not science. It's not science. It's crazy. You know why it's 1 in 1,000? Because they're having 7 to 10 times more interactions with the police. There's no other way to tell these people this. I don't know. Marcia McNutt. I'm rolling. Some crazy names out there. I expected to see a fellow white name, to tell you the truth. The Post-owned comprehensive examination of police shootings showed that black Americans account for just 13% of the population, but 1/4 of shooting victims. Among unarmed victims, the disparity was even greater. More than 1/3 of those fatally shot were black. If you're willing to go, look, I say it on every stream. If you're telling the truth, you don't have to lie. You don't have to admit facts. You don't have to muddy the waters. You don't have to try to hide something behind something and hope nobody notices. Why can't you be honest here and say that black people have more interactions with the police because black people commit more crime? And we know why they don't say that, because that kills their narrative of systemic racism. In places where look, you take 2 white neighborhoods, put them side by side, 2 white neighborhoods side by side. You have a high crime white neighborhood and a low crime white neighborhood. Who is getting shot more by police? Who is getting brutalized more by police? Who is interacting with police more? The high crime neighborhoods. This stuff is so axiomatically obvious to anyone who just wants to remove victimhood from the equation. If it helps you think, remove victimhood, remove black people from the equation, and look at it white to white, Asian to Asian. Seriously, it's a simple, easy way to do it that will give you accurate results. If there is a white neighborhood that is high crime, there are going to be more people shot by police and brutalized by police in that neighborhood than Mayberry, that's peaceful, and the only thing you have to worry about is Gomer getting drunk on the weekends. Literally, some of the most axiomatic, I don't like the term common sense, but it applies here. Because common sense once said metal boats couldn't float. they sure as hell can sink, ain't it? Damn, Jack was the original simp. Fuck Rose. Anyways, who's going to get shot more? People in the violent neighborhood or people in the peaceful neighborhood? Or add blacks in it. Who gets shot more? Black people in violent neighborhoods like Chicago or more peaceful neighborhoods in the suburbs? They literally act like white police just rove around the streets looking for black people to kill. Notice another variable they don't include. They say unarmed, but notice another variable they don't include is how many black people versus white people are armed or try to, like Mike Brown did, rip the gun away from the police. I ain't going to jail today, N-word. You got to take me alive, motherfucker. They don't include any of that, and then they call them scientific studies. I want fries, says Call Me. I will go get you some fries. They use that statistic to say it is the result of oppression. Of course, Bobby Quayle, that's all they can go with. That's their explain all for everything. All of these things, she's like, you're going to be stumped by these statistics. All of these things are explainable by pointing out that none of these things are actually studies. None of these things are actually logical. None of these things are mathematical. None of these things are scientific. Y'all have not put any scientific rigor into any sort of methodology which could even pass remotely for a science other than a humanity. So the National Academy of Sciences, I'm guessing here, actually has humanities departments in it. The biologists didn't put this out. The chemists didn't put this out. The medical doctors didn't put this out. They wouldn't. And insofar as they did, it would be shuttered. It would be stopped. They would say, that's not what we do here. That's what sociologists do. Sociologists are the scum underneath the boots of physicists, who are the top of the branch, because mathematics is like the commonality among all natural sciences, is that if you're not good with mathematics, you're not going to be good with science. Physicists, I'd say technical engineers underneath them. I'd say chemists underneath them. I'd say biologists underneath them. And then I'd say underneath biologists is you have more physical natural sciences, geologists and taxonomists and physical anthropologists and etc. There's a hierarchical structure to the natural sciences, on top of which physics reigns supreme, because science is all about how are you going to do those computations and calculations. You have to include or exclude all of these many different variables if you want to call it science. You can't just look at Z and infer A is thus correct when A was your presupposition and then turn around and call that science. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Where's my old lady mean? Good question. For power, maybe keep people down in victimhood and control them. I missed the question. Oh, Calm Out asked, why are they hunting for proof of oppression and racism? I really don't know. I wish I knew. Is it for a Marxist takeover? I don't know. They can do that anytime they want. They can whip up black people into a frenzy, Latino people into a frenzy over just about anything. Just yell free shoes. You know, these riots aren't much different from the flash mobs that take place every day in America, just larger. Every day in America. You want to know why black people are shot in a higher proportionality than white people? Because white people don't rush a store 50 at a time and steal everything off the shelves and beat up the owner on the way out. That's why. It's science if you want to control for the variables and actually do a real study, but it's not rocket science. We're not going to colonize Mars here, people. Anyway, here's the next study thing. Why African Americans are far more likely to be arrested for petty crimes. A 2018 study exposed. Look, again, this is simple. This is simple stuff. Simple stuff to anybody who can think. You want to know why? Because most black people about whom you're speaking that are arrested, they live in inner cities that are already very, very high crime. So police are very, very sensitive, and the police forces there go all Rudolph Giuliani with their broken windows bullshit, which is why they want to abolish the police there. So they're arrest happy. They're arrest happy. If you're spray painting a barn in Mayberry, and Andy Griffith stops you, he knows your name. It's a peaceful town, and whether you're white, black, or whatever, he's going to take you home. He's going to say, "Don't do this again, Billy Bob. Don't do this again, Jamal. Don't be out here committing physical graffiti on Mr. Johnson's barn." But if you break a window in the city, whoop whoop, that's just down in the police. You're getting arrested. Petty crime, quotation marks around petty crime. That's why. That's why. Anyone with a brain that's willing to be honest knows why. The cities, you're more likely to get arrested in a city for something than in a suburb that has a lower population density. What do you think? What do you people think? Why are you right now calling for the police to be abolished because you say the policing is too harsh, too strict? It's because you people are high crime in the city. And I'm not talking about black people. I'm talking about this crazy white woman too. Could be a fellow white woman. She supports the crime, doesn't support the stopping of the crime. The stopping of the crime is the racism. The committing the crime is what? What? Civil disobedience? What? Petty crime. You know, what are petty crimes? In the city, they have these postulates, these hypotheses, and sometimes these theories that these younger people who engage in petty crimes need to be taken and slapped on the wrist hard before they use that petty crime as a gateway drug to raping a white woman and claiming it's for reparations. That's not a hyperbolic example. That's something that literally happened by a recidivist, by someone who started out committing petty crimes. You crack down harder on petty crimes in the city. And who are the biggest inhabitants of the inner city who also coincidentally commit the most crime? What are joggers? A 2020 study of marijuana possession arrests by American Civil Liberties Union concluded that in the stark racial... Okay, where is the information of how many of these people were on probation? I bet you they don't include that, do they? I bet you they don't. A Tale of Two Countries, racially targeted arrests in the era of marijuana reform. Racially targeted effects, details from 2010 to 18, racial disparities, national, state, and county levels, updating their previous report to War on Marijuana on Black and White to feels that racist war on marijuana is far from over. More than 6 million arrests occurred between the years, and black people are still more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than white people in every state, including those that have legalized marijuana, with detailed recommendations for governments and law enforcement agencies. Notice what they left out, because this is propaganda. Notice what they left out. Probation. We've seen it in studies before when they tried to pull this shit. This is nothing new. This is the same thing as black people are sentenced longer than white people on the same crime. No, that fell apart, and they had to stop saying that because everybody else, not me because I'm not popular, but you know, all the Jared Taylors of the world out there, people like that were really pushing the hammer. Probably Tucker Carlson too on Fox, who has the biggest megaphone. That no, they're recidivist. R-E-C-idivist. Their recidivism rates are higher. If you stop a white person with marijuana, what are they going to do when the police stop you? They ask for your identification, they go back in their car, and they run a warrant check on you. If you don't have any warrants, okay. But it's still going to show Jamal Jackson is on probation. Sorry, sir, we have to arrest you. You are in violation of your probation. This is the most, I thought, somebody was going to bring the beef. I thought somebody was going to bring out the big guns, cross the streams on Ghostbusters, and I was going to blow up like Stay Puft and be here. Damn, they have a point. This is systemic racism. This is the easiest stuff ever. And we know it's the easiest stuff because it's not what y'all include. It's what y'all intentionally leave out. You intentionally leave out that these are people who are being arrested by and large because they're on probation. They already have gotten a charge and are bounced on their own recog and just given probation, or they're out of jail and still have to finish the stint of their probation. Because you add probation to a jail sentence so you don't have to crowd the jails with people who are doing 10 years. You give them a reduced sentence of, okay, a year and 6 months and then 5 years supervised probation. That's why the white people don't have, and again, they could include this and then go back and say, well, it's systemic racism that black people are even being arrested for. But they can't. They can't, again, remember, because they cannot allow themselves to admit that black people can do anything wrong. These are people who are coddling black Americans. They're holding them to this deification level on a pedestal. You know, Atlas held the world and shrugged. These people are holding the entire black race on a pedestal and got the most stoic, solid shoulders you ever seen. They'll never shrug. Even when it comes for them, a lot of them won't shrug. You know how to dissect these studies, and this is a pro tip to anybody who'll watch this now or in perpetuity. You will always know how to dissect these studies and debunk these studies, not for what they include, but what they leave out. Like, remember that doll study that they did back in the 1940s, where they just handed black kids black and white dolls? You can debunk that tons of ways for how they did it, but you can also dismiss it for what they left out. What did they leave out? The glaringly obvious fact that they didn't test black people outside of American society to see if perhaps, maybe, just maybe, the human eye prefers lighter colors, or if kids just recognize these things as toys and not freaking people. The things they leave out of this, out of these studies, quote unquote, just to push propaganda, it in a way it never ceases to amaze me, while at the same time it doesn't surprise me. I guess I'm saying that I always expect them to leave something out, but what they leave out amazes me. How could you possibly leave out the biggest determining factor if you're going to get arrested for marijuana or just written a citation? The biggest determinant there of any race, of any place where marijuana would be illegal, would be whether or not you're on probation or a recidivist. And they leave it completely out. I'm telling you, this nonsense, I can't do it. Let me go in here and grab the chat if I missed any chat. Hold on here. Oh crap, what did I do? You can't scroll in here. Keck, when I was drunk in college, I'd call the police to have them follow me home. A small town of 25K people, and I worked the third shift. I grew up in a pretty small town too, and every time they seen me out, they'd take me to jail. I did a summer of like 19 nights in the drunk tank, and they'd take me to jail. I'd never even thought once. A few times, I'd say probably 7 or 8 times, it was a black cop. I never once thought, because I'm white? No, I never once thought that. It's because I'm drunk. If I got weed on me, which is illegal where I live, won't be for long because Virginia's turning into California. But if I got weed on me and I get arrested, I would expect to be, because I'm doing something illegal, no matter what race I am. See, this is the thing here. It's not like they're saying police are planting marijuana on the black people. They're saying the black people are committing the crime. But what they're arguing here, in a roundabout way, if you read between the lines, is that they should be exempt from it. They should be exempt from arrest for petty crimes. They should be exempt from traffic stops. Black people should be treated as a special class of human being and be exempt from these things for which white people are held responsible more often, just not in higher percentage, because white people don't commit as much crime. Maybe these people, in a way, and I'm just throwing this out there to try to give them some credit, because a lot of us think that they're just anti-white and hate all white people. Maybe it could be that they just fancy themselves such intellectuals with their sociology degrees and critical race theory degrees and humanities, and they fancy themselves so scientific as the intelligentsia. Maybe they think that the answer being that simple is too simple, therefore it must be wrong. Therefore they have to introduce factors which don't exist to complicate it so that they can pretend that they're the ones who solved it. That could be it. That would be more of something to look at on a psychological level, and then really create a detailed analysis to where you could track their studies and to see how they act with all of these things, which is something I would never enact a labor to do, because I don't have the audience to do it. I don't have the audience worth doing that. Okay, so that was that one. What's another one? Is that there was only three that debunked themselves? I didn't have to. It's like Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. The movie would have played out the same way, they say, if Indiana Jones wasn't in it. This is debunked without me. You didn't need me to tell you this was nonsense. They debunked themselves in the studies by not actually conducting scientific studies. How are you going to leave out that black people commit more traffic offenses? How are you going to leave out that black people have 7 to 10 times more interactions with the police? How are you going to leave out that the people being arrested for weed possession are already on probation? It's a probation violation. I don't know what the codes are elsewhere, but it's called a PB-13 here. You get yanked up and taken immediately to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect your $200. You immediately to jail. Your probation officer call you and laugh at you. Proving systemic bias is complex. Well, you just argued that it wasn't with these studies. But you know these studies are bunk, so you're going to say it's complex. And there is evidence suggesting, for example, that class disparities play a significant role in explaining the disparate... See, what did I say at the top? Disparate. The disparate results. Disparate is just a way to say, in a political context, that we shouldn't be held accountable for things out of our control. This is, when white people do it, a tacit admission that there are racial differences. It's just they can't bring themselves to say that, because then they would be the Nazis, right? A 2018 analysis published by left-leaning People's Policy Project conducted that the mass incarceration in the United States is primarily a system of locking up lower-class men, one which ends up disproportionately imprisoning black men, since they are far more likely to be lower class than white men. Yeah, again, we can easily debunk this. I don't need to take a drink. I don't need to take a breath. I can get right into it. You're saying that because black people are more low income, therefore there's more of them in prison per proportion. However, there are 3 times the amount of poor white people in America, and the poorest white place in America is the Appalachian Mountain region, which is, other than like Connecticut, up there in Connecticut and Vermont, the most peaceful place in the United States. Poverty does not cause crime. That's nonsense. Welfare doesn't cause crime. Turd fling the monkey can kick rocks. Race is the only commonality we find in high crime, low crime, because the richest black areas in the United States commit more crime than the poorest white areas in the United States. If what you're saying here is even remotely true, then what we would see would be the most people in prison, period, by far and away, would be poor white men. But that is not what we see. We see the people who are most in prison are the people who commit the most crime, and people in high income black families or societies, neighborhoods, whatever you want to call them, commit crime at a higher rate than white people across the board. This stuff is quite easily verifiably nonsense. A 2019 study at Boston University, researchers found that black men were far more likely to be shot by police in predominantly African American neighborhoods than in less racially segregated neighborhoods. She just proved my point that I made half hour ago. She just literally proved my point that I made half hour ago. Why are they more likely to be shot by police in predominantly African American neighborhoods? Because those predominantly African American neighborhoods have higher rates of crime and higher rates of policing, and police who are more on edge because there's more crime, particularly more violent crime, and therefore black men who are the suspects for committing the crime the most in those predominantly African American cities are going to be predominantly the people who are shot in those cities. Whereas if they're in mixed cities where it's more white people and there's not as much crime, they're not as likely to be shot there because they are not as likely to interact with the police. I can do this crap in my sleep, and they got to get universities to study it. Yet they're the intelligentsia, and I'm the dumb redneck racist. The fuck out of here. Pure nonsense. None of this proves the absence of a systemic problem. Now we have to prove a negative. This is how brilliant they are. None of this proves the absence of a systemic problem. So she's saying the study agreed with me. Yeah. And now you want to try to debunk that study by this. Listen to what I'm using to debunk these studies, and look at what she's saying to debunk these studies. That don't prove nothing. That don't prove nothing. A study conducted that. I give her credit for including the study that contradicted her, but I guess she has a payoff for that. I guess she's going to bring up another way that it was racism. Yep. It suggests a deeper one. A matter of entrenched and extreme inequality that goes beyond criminal justice itself to the broader questions of lingering racial inequities in the United States. It does none of that. What it says is that if there's black people there in high numbers, predominantly black people in a city, in a neighborhood, it's going to have more crime than a racially mixed neighborhood or white neighborhood. We see this not only in every state, every town, every city, every county, in the whole United States of America. We see this the whole of Earth. Earth, lady, Earth. Third rock from the sun, 4.5 billion years old. 7.1 billion Homo sapiens. Everywhere they are in higher numbers, they have higher numbers of crime. It's okay to admit that's true. That's not saying they're inferior. That's not saying they deserve to be slaves, because they don't. That's not saying they deserve to be oppressed, because they don't. What that is saying is that they need to be policed tougher because they commit more crime. When you do this underhanded shit, like call entire systems of policing, the entire mechanism by which neighborhoods are policed, systemically racist, you're taking away their ability to keep that crime at bay, punish that crime after it happens, which is going to lead to far more crime. Then you know who feels the disparate impact of that? The 90% of people who are already the victims of interracial assaults, being white people, to the tune of over 1,200 per day in the United States of America. Anybody disagree with that number? Bet me right now. Bet me right now. 1,000 in cash to your nickel. And go to the Department of Justice with a calculator and do the math. Over 1,200 white people every single day in the United States of America are assaulted by black people, who are 13% of the population. Yet you want to do away with policing or change the way black people are policed. Why? So that can increase to 3,600? Would that make you happy? Would that be enough disparate impact in the opposite direction? It's crazy. No, I'm not reading more from Ruth Marcus's archive. This is an intellectually vapid person who's probably literally only there because she's a woman. Can you see a man who isn't black or Jewish? Can you see a white man being this stupid and holding the job? Unless he's supremely connected or a victim group. Like, look at CNN. Little baby Cuomo, Fredo Cuomo. He's connected. Anderson Cooper, he takes it in through the outdoors, so he's a protected class. You know, you won't have a random white man on here who's this stupid because nobody give him a job. Even if he's preaching the principles of Marxism and this nonsense here, like this lady is. Jared Taylor disagrees. When we streamed, he disagreed that it was Marxism at the root. I don't think it's Marxism at the root. I think it's Marxism working in concert. I think Marxism couldn't, this is just my opinion, I could well be wrong. I believe that Marxists realized in America that playing the proletariat against the bourgeoisie as a class battle wasn't winning for them, because everyone would always realize that they was the bourgeoisie. You can't have an iPhone in your pocket, a $15 Starbucks in your hand, wearing $200 buckle boots, and say that you're the proletariat and that we need to overthrow the system. So they want to overthrow the system, but they had to go about it another way. So they inserted race to act as a proxy for their class revolution. Now their race revolution, they're hoping is going to act as their class revolution, and whether it will or won't, I don't know, but in my opinion, that's what they're trying to do. That's why I believe they're at the heart of this. That's why I believe they push this information. Misinformation, I should say. It's not information, it's bunk. I might well be wrong. Thank you very much to Real Uncle Buck for the ice cream. I definitely appreciate that. Before I jump off here, I'm going to get into one more thing that was just also on the recommend page. It's nothing of deep intellectual meaning or anything. Not like anything I say is. Anyways, I might be the dumb one and she might be the smart one. All I know is this. When you're doing a scientific study and you're not including variables, you are excluding those variables strictly because for the express purpose of getting the results that you want to get. You then publish that as a study, and your entire argument for systemic racism hinges on a broken study that was built from a malformed premise to begin with. And then you say that you're the intelligent one. I beg to differ. Maybe you got the real study hidden behind the paywall. Then we'll see where you included all the variables that I'm requesting. Look, I'm just a little nobody. I was just a little research scientist for a very hot minute. I got a little minor education that's nothing compared to the shit people go through for quantum physics and mechanical engineering in some fields in some respects. I'm just a guy who knew what evolution was and could inherently understand the processes by which it works, the mechanisms by which it works, and had an easy go at it. So that's all I am. I have a more than rudimentary knowledge about science. I have a master's level understanding about science. These people seem to have a humanities level understanding about science, which isn't science. Bobby Quill says most blacks here are based and cool, but there is another culture that ruins it for them. But there isn't any major issues. Black commit more crime. I hate saying it, but I hate saying it too. Because Calm Al and Real Uncle Buck and Apu Can Dance, thank you very much, Apu Can Dance, for the donation. They have all been to my streams before and heard me plead desperately for black people to stop dying and stop getting sick by controlling their sugar intake, their overall carbohydrate intake, and by getting more sun. I want them to live and be prosperous. I'm not a sociopath. I don't hate other people. I want them to live and be prosperous. And then that way, when they realize that it's not racism that's making them sick and holding them down, when they realize that it's themselves and their lifestyles, maybe they'll be less angry, and maybe it'll go from 1,200 white people attacked a day in the streets to maybe 200. Maybe we can get it down a good push. Maybe, just maybe. So I care about helping black people, not placating them and telling them that nothing they do is ever their fault, and then just burying all of the stats where they get arrested because they're recidivist and on probation, or that they break more traffic laws or commit more crime. I don't like saying it either. You take your career into your own hands. And in some instances, like if you're a popular figure, you take your life into your own hands by merely telling the truth. In times of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. I don't know if I got that quote right verbatim, but it really seems to be that's what the truth is. This one, I just found this one funny. I don't know what it is. This isn't my neck of the woods. The only way is Essex. Vaz J. Morgan accuses show of systemic racism. This is what happens. This is why I wanted to bring this up in conjunction with the other one. Because systemic racism is just the new word for the day. They've gotten off of white privilege for right now. Now systemic racism means anything. Anything that you don't like that happens to you because you're a black person, it's not racism anymore. It's systemic racism. Where you're not blaming one white person for doing you dirty, you're blaming all white people for the privilege of you living in their society, yet somehow still oppressing you. Seems to me if white people wanted to oppress black people, they would just oust them. They wouldn't keep them around to get attacked to the tune of 1,200 every single day. Every single day. Every single day. They would oust them if they really wanted, if they were really racist against them. They wouldn't be constantly trying to help them. Do you help someone you hate? I used to hate my neighbor, little short bastard, called him Mario. One of his closets painted one time. Yeah. Yeah, buddy. Find Hill's address and send it some ice cubes, man. So this one is The Only Way is Essex star. I guess that's a TV show over in Britistan, England stan, has accused the ITV reality show of systemic racism. See, it's just a TV show. It's not a system per se. It's a few individuals who are working for a company, who are working for advertisers to make money for that company. But the entire system, this is what this shit leads to. Is black people, every time you push this nonsense, you know that old, it's a good life, every time a bell rings, angel gets its wings. Every time somebody pushes a new article about this nonsense, another black person suddenly drops everything they're doing and says, you know what? Nothing is my responsibility. It's just really because white people hate me. Yeah, you know, I don't got to wear a condom the next time I bang this girl who's already got 4 kids by 4 daddies. I'm not responsible for that if she gets pregnant. I'll just run out. I get locked up for child support. I'm not responsible for paying child support. If white people hadn't created these systems of oppression, there would never be child support that disproportionately targets black absent fathers. It's crazy, man. Yeah, friggin' Mario, I used to tell him to go jump on turtles. What the fuck away from me, buddy. He posted on Instagram that he was put into situations that perpetuated, I'm too far away from the computer screen. I can read, I swear, at least at like a 5th grade level, the same racial stereotype and was treated differently from his white castmate. Isn't that what they always say? Now, I want y'all to do a thought experiment. Anybody who's watching this now or who's watching it in the future, whatever, just do a thought experiment at your own leisure. It don't have to be now. When you have a quiet moment alone, imagine that you were born. Doesn't matter how you were born. Just outside society told you all your life. Told you all your life that you're different and will be treated different. No matter if you were the same as everybody else. That's what they told you. You're different and you'll be treated different. So when you go through life, every single interaction you have, good or bad, the way you're going to view that is to project out onto the world. I had this good experience because they're treating me different. I had this bad experience because they're treating me different. You understand and get through that thought experiment, you'll understand the birth of microaggressions, which are catch-22s, which are if you say hello to a black person, you are trying to call attention to them in order to other them. If you ignore a black person and don't say hello, you are distasteful of them. You despise them. Or maybe you are scared of them. This is coming from the minds of black people who have been told by like that white bitch before all their lives that everyone is against them. So no matter how they're treated, good, bad, or indifferent, They view it because I'm black. That's a meme for a reason. It's a stereotype for a reason. Will you tell someone that they're different and special? And like I said, if people have trouble with that and think it's a little bit racially insensitive, bordering racism, take black people out of it. Look at white people. Look at white girls that parents dote on them all their life. Oh, baby, Bella, you're such a little princess. The whole world is at your feet. You're so perfect in every way. You're so special. And then society tells her, you're a woman. You don't need no stinking man. You don't need anybody. You should get the best of everything just because you're a woman. What happens? What happens? She gets a gender studies degree, then tries to become, by magic, by somebody propelling her there, the CEO of a Wall Street company, a brokerage. And she doesn't get it. Then she says, I only didn't get it because of patriarchy, toxic masculinity, and oppression against women. This is a clear and understood psychological principle of projection. You're bottling up these kids by telling them these things, black parents or black parent, black mamas. Y'all are othering your own children from themselves. They don't have any psychological identity. They don't have nothing firm onto which they can latch and say, this is me. All they can say is, I'm not them. They never get a sense of self-importance that I am me. I am strong. I am an individual. All they get the sense of is, I'm not like everybody else. That's all. So every single interaction they have, it's a racist slight against them, because that's how they view the world. People who hate him so much that he's a star of a reality TV show. I guess they put him there just because he was black to do racist things. He spoke out at length after the show's official Instagram page started deleting his comments under a Black Lives Matter post. The show's spokeswoman said that they had been concerned to read his comments. We got in touch with him yesterday evening and hope we can discuss the issues he raised. Well, yeah, because they're white people or Jewish people and they don't want to be accused of racism, especially Jewish people. Once you accuse Jewish people of racism, man, they oy vey the fuck out. And then that's when they start going really hard with the fellow whites. You want to know why Talia Lavin and the Jewish progressive Marxists, why they go so hard in on that fellow white shit, is because they're being accused of being white racist. And they have to remind everybody, hey, I'm one of the good ones. Then they fall back to Happy Hanukkah. Morgan, who was on the show from 14 to 18, added that he was almost never allowed to show any sides of my personality that wasn't angry, aggressive, or negative. The fuck are you talking about? They made you act a certain way, and you stayed 4 years? Notice the apropos timing of him coming out under a Black Lives Matter post. Now I can come out. Me too. Victimhood is contagious. Meritocracy is like searching for lost treasure, and all you have is a brown ass wrinkled old map with an X on it. Having to find your own way to something. Having to piggyback off of everybody else's cyclical victims movements is the easy route. All of a sudden everybody's a victim. He said he was told that he was the token representation of minority in our cast. Sure he was. Sure he was. Evidence of this? Of course, no evidence of this. No evidence of this. Well, that's about an hour, folks. I'd like to thank anybody for showing up if they showed up. I definitely appreciate it. Thank you all very much for the donations to the channel. They add up. Once my box gets a little bit filled, what I like to do is I like to gift back. I take what's in my box and then I add 500 extra tokens to my box, and I disperse among the plebeians like a Caesar is what I do. Anyways, thank y'all very much for showing. Y'all know I don't think of myself that way. I'm the most self-deprecating person there is. I can never be a turd-flinging monkey. I can't wrap my head around that type of self-importance. when you're not even making sex to a real woman. But I'm not getting into all that. I apologize. Anyways, thank y'all very much for showing up. I'm going to dip on out of here and get me some dinner. Thanks. First time with D Life, says Bobby Quill. Hey, Bobby Quill, I'm happy to have y'all, man. Anytime y'all want, y'all can suggest topics or whatever, and we'll do the damn thing. I'll catch y'all later.